Yeah,
Like
your schooling sounds very similar to mine. I mean, I used to do all my homework in the lunch hour because I had all my side hustles to do as soon as I got home from school. And I just wouldn't have enough time to run all my little businesses I had going. So on the subject of schooling, how was your schooling? What sort of education did you have?
So I have a very, very, very unique perspective where basically what happened was I was born in Russia, a place called Dagestan, which is like...
Next door to Borat?
Like, okay, so imagine what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like my grandma's home, there's no toilet. Like you take a right past like the chickens, the cows, and then you go...
a hole in the ground.
Exactly. Yeah, and then like water, anyway, whatever. And so that was like the first 4 years of my life. Yeah. And then my biological father was alcoholic abusive. So, thankfully my mom left him by the time that I was born. And then my mom met my stepdad. They tried living together. Basically, my stepdad was a very wealthy businessman. So we moved to London. So it was like fairy tale story, right? Like
everything looking good.
Everything's looking good. Anyways, long story short, I guess that didn't really work out the way that, that kind of unfolded after, 3-4 years. He was a very, very not so nice man, I guess you can say. And basically they ended up staying married because, the benefit for him was basically he left, he moved to Dubai, so he wasn't technically a tax resident here, but there was ties, but because he had family, he could, anyways, long story short, he got some tax benefits out of us, and we got one benefit and one benefit only. I got to go to private school.
Yeah.
What school did you go to?
I went to a place called South Bank International School, which as far as I know is the most expensive non-boarding private school in the world.
Right, wow.
So I had the weirdest experience because I grew up in Chelsea. So I grew up in Chelsea, SW7, in a house that hadn't been, that had been bought, like 20 years prior, never renovated. The last 4 years before I moved out, we had no warm water, no heating because my stepdad would refuse to pay it. And then when my stepdad found out that I was started a business when I was 15, he cut off the Wi-Fi. That's actually why I was...
Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he encourage you to start a business?
He was...
Not nice.
He was a very troubled man. We'll leave it at that. I always joke, that's actually why I have my cell phone provider is 3. And let's be honest, 3 is it's not the best. Let's leave it at that, right?
And now we're not going to be able to get a sponsorship.
yeah.
Just beat that out, Sam.
But you felt the loyalty to 3.
I'm still with them.
Yeah.
Because I feel, exactly, I have the loyalty.
Loyalty is a big thing.
Because basically back in 2015, they had this offer where for £25 a month, you could do unlimited hotspot from your phone.
I remember that at school. We were using it with all our mates.
Exactly, right? because I had no Wi-Fi at home, I literally built my entire business off the hotspot from my phone. I had this super weird childhood where I was living in an affluent area. We had no warm water, no heating. My stepdad cut my Wi-Fi off. My mom was bouncing between, she worked summer temporary jobs, minimum wage, Harrods. At some point she was receptionist at Chelsea Westminster Hospital. At some point when things were really bad, we basically applied and got government benefits. We got approved for that. So it was this super, super weird childhood where I had no money at all, but then I was also going to private school. So I was around so much wealth. So I think that's why I had a very, 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 very difficult childhood. It's a very difficult childhood having to take care of me and my mom, but I had the luckiest childhood because I had the perfect mix of I had no choice. The things I've done, I always tell people the things I've done, you don't do unless you've been through some really traumatic stuff and you really, really push. And by the way, the other thing I will say is a lot of people try to downplay people that come from, or children that come from wealthy families. And I always say I think it's equally, if not more challenging because everything's set, everything's laid out. You don't have that pressure. So I had the best combination of the pressure, but then I also had for me, even little things from the age of 7 or 8 years old, I would refuse to turn my, if a Ferrari would drive by, I would never turn my head. I would never look at a Ferrari. I would never, let alone take a photo. For me, it was if I put too much importance on this, I'm saying that I'm not deserving of it. So I was doing this at the age of 7, 8. So for me, money was never a question of, am I going to be wealthy? I knew unequivocally 100% without a fact that I was going to be wealthy. I'm just 10 years ahead of my game plan.
Yeah.
What did you think of the other kids at private school and their mentality?
I thought about this a lot because I was also listening to the podcast that you guys did, and obviously, Chris, I know that you went to private school.
Yeah.
And I was, I think with my children, do I send them to private school? Do I not send them to private school? I think I send them to private school because you're gonna get people that it is a better mentality through and through, but it can be a little soft, and especially the other thing is the private school that I went to, like we're talking like. Whatever, I won't say any names specifically, but like famous people's kids. We're talking billionaire status people, right? So it's like they're very sort of out of touch with reality. And I guess for me, it was also very, very difficult because it was kind of known. Well, I guess I told some of my close friends and confidants, and they kind of knew a little bit of what was happening at home and why. Why I couldn't join them for lunch, or I couldn't go to the cinema with them. Like I couldn't afford to do those things. So I guess that was difficult in some senses.
Did you find the school in being in the private sector aspirational, or that it was pushing you, or did you feel not? How was the schooling, and when did you leave?
So I dropped out when I was 17 years old.
Okay.
I think I'm the only person to ever drop out of that school. Like drop out and not go to another school. And they've invited me back.
You didn't go to university or anything like that?
No, I dropped out of school at age of 17. That was it.
Yeah.
So funnily enough, one of the most interesting things is I think going to that school made money less aspirational to me.
Really? Okay.
And that's the interesting big thing, because I would go home and I'd see my mom, who was, and I mean, considering all the stuff, I'm skimming over like 99.9% of stuff, between my biological father, who was just insane, between my stepdad, who was a very, very evil, probably the most evil person I've ever met in my entire life. I've met a lot of people. And between those two, she's come a long way. Like these days, she's a happy chappy, like, she's retired, and she's.
And I've seen you treat her very well on your Instagram.
Yeah, I like to take care of my wife. She's the only person I have. So
is she still living in the UK?
She is at the moment. She's in Dubai actually at the moment. So she's basically wherever I am in the world, I make sure she's got a place close to me. So in Dubai, I got her an apartment in the same building. So she's, I always make sure she has a key. Like even when I was living in London, she would always have a key. I'd always make sure she had an apartment 5 minutes away from my house. So right now she's just between Dubai and my house in Cape Town. I've just been flying her between the two, and then we're looking to get her a place here in London. So I'm just waiting for some of the prices to come down, which I guess it depends.
I think it's coming. Yeah.
It depends on your worldview. My worldview is definitely, prices will be coming down. But just kind of going back to the last point. The interesting thing was I would see my mom, who was miserable and had no money, and then I'd go to my friend's parents' house and they were miserable and they had all the money in the world. And it was the same thing. So I think that's why for me, money has always been I never placed that much importance on it. I never thought my life is going to change once I have it, and even at like the levels I am now, like, some people reach, a certain threat, whatever, let's say 8 figures. And like, once I get to 9 figures, then my problems will go away. I know my problems will never go away. Unless I tackle my problems outside of money, nothing will ever happen. Nothing will ever change. So I think, funnily enough, going to that school made money not less aspirational to me, but it was just never on a pedestal, because I'm like, you guys are all miserable. My mom's miserable. There's no difference, So
if money doesn't